Welcome to KRQE's New Mexico News Insiders, 2025 Regional Edward R. Murrow Award winner for Best Podcast. Here's Gabrielle Burkhart and Chris McKee.
So on topic with today's episode, Gabby, outside of doing news stories, because I know that's immediately where you might go, have you ever ridden a city bus? Not a school bus, but a city bus.
A city bus.
Yeah.
Yes, but not regularly.
Okay.
It was more like for the experience. Does that make sense?
Yes. Did that happen sometime recently?
No.
Okay.
My mind does go to the last time I rode a city bus. It was for a news story.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of see how the route was going along Central.
Yeah. And I think the reason for the question is that getting more people to ride the bus, people who don't necessarily ride regularly, is actually a big part of the goal for the city of Albuquerque. With a newer series of changes that they have begun rolling out and really will continue to roll out over the next 4 years.
Have you ridden the city bus?
Not for anything but a news story. So yeah, same here.
But did you ride it in Oregon?
Yeah, when I used to live in Eugene and Corvallis, and then also just visiting friends and family in Portland, would ride the bus or ride other public transit quite often.
Yeah, sometimes I think you go to other cities or visit places and it's just more of a thing, right? Yeah. Like public transit, subways, it doesn't really feel like it's that ingrained into at least our city.
That's true.
From my perspective, I don't know.
Yeah, so can that change for Albuquerque?
We'll see. ABQ RIDE, as we know it, is calling this move a once-in-a-generation plan to improve transit and meet the demand for bus services in a way that makes sense for rider demand, city growth, and transit patterns of today. That's end quote from what they're describing this plan. The what behind all of this is what the city calls its ABQ Ride Forward Network Plan. Essentially, it's the first major change to bus routes system-wide in decades, including where and how often buses will go to stops.
Yeah, this comes in the years after the pandemic, which decreased ridership. The city has also gone to a zero fares system. That's also been a big change in the last few years. They launched an on-demand transit service, and as well as safety on board buses has continued to be a topic we know in recent years. So let's get into it. Joining us today are two leaders from ABQ RIDE, Deputy Director Bobby Sisneros and also Principal Planner Andrew Garmo. Bobby and Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Let's start with just what each of you do, introduce you to our audience a little bit. Bobby, you've worked for the city for quite some time. I know you and I were joking that we've both been around a while in Albuquerque. Didn't mean to call you old by any means. But today you're a deputy director for transit. Do you ride the bus system?
I do. I get out at least once a month and ride our system.
Okay. So tell us, what do you do as far as your job as it relates to Albuquerque's city bus system?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in charge of 5 areas over at ABQ RIDE: planning, the planning division, IT division, marketing, safety, security, our communication division.
Okay.
Okay. And Andrew as well, you're principal planner for ABQ RIDE.
Right.
But you have a different purview, obviously, than Bobby. What do you do?
Yeah, so I do service planning and some capital projects as well. So I've been with ABQ RIDE for quite a long time now, so I've seen a lot of changes over the years. I came in 2000, and it's been a great honor to be there. In
2000, is this the first transit system you had ever worked for, or did you work in others before?
No, this is my first transit agency.
Okay, but yeah, so quite a bit of investment here and figuring out the future as of recent.
Right.
And I'm just curious because Chris asked me the question and just thinking about who rides the bus. Before you guys worked for ABQ RIDE, did you ride public transportation?
Yes.
Was that a part of your lives? Yeah?
Yeah.
My first day at transit, I borrowed gas money to get to work. And then when I was at work, they gave me my employee pass and said, you can ride the bus for free with this. And it never dawned on me to ride the bus to work. So 18 years ago, I made up my mind I'm going to try to change that so people think of the bus and they remember to use the bus in Albuquerque.
Interesting.
Okay. But you had already been used to it.
Yeah. Not here, actually, in full disclosure. I'd lived in Austin before I moved here and used the bus a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this ABQ Ride Forward initiative, from your perspectives, Bobby and Andrew, what's the goal here? Like, how big of a deal, high level, is this for a city where not everybody, admittedly, rides the bus?
I'll speak to the goal or how big of a deal it is, and I'll let Andrew take the goal. This is a big deal because for so many years we've had basically the same system. We would add to it when we needed to and tweak routes along the way. But one of the largest complaints we always hear is the bus isn't there when I need it. It's not frequent enough. It doesn't go where I need to go. So this ABQ Forward plan really allowed us to address a lot of that. And that's what makes it a big deal, is for once we were able to really take feedback from the public and get them the service that they're demanding from us.
We started this project actually 3 years ago in 2022, looking at our entire system, sort of for the first time in a generation, putting all our cards on the table and saying, do our buses go where they should go? Do they run at the time they should? How often they should? And those are some fundamental questions. So we spent a lot of time over the last 3 years talking to the public, getting their viewpoints, because there are different ways you can plan a transit network based on what the goal is.
Yeah. So just to be clear, ABQ Ride Forward, this is basically a complete reorganization of where the bus goes, how often it goes, heading into these reorganization, patterns now that are playing out. What would you say has been the Achilles heel, or maybe the main weakness of ABQ Ride? You mentioned a little bit of that idea of like, does the bus go where I need it to go, or how often? But what trends did you see that made you say we need a change here?
Yeah, I think with the pandemic really forced a lot of transit agencies, ourselves included, to kind of re-examine what we were doing with our resources. So pre-pandemic, there was a lot of emphasis on commuter routes that would get people to downtown for their office jobs, working 8 to 5. Obviously, the pandemic really allowed those people not to go to the office at all. So no use for a commuter route if people aren't even going downtown to their job. And at the same time, there are a lot of other people who commute to work, but they don't work 8 to 5 and they don't work downtown. So like other transit agencies, we started to think about, is this really the way we should be using our resources? We don't necessarily have more, but can we rearrange how we distribute our service to serve a lot more people who are not necessarily downtown commuters?
Is staffing been a big issue of that? Part of what we've discussed in the past is like, do you have enough bus drivers for all these routes? Is that an issue?
Yeah, definitely. So we want to be responsible when we implement this plan. We're going to implement it in 16 different phases. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure we have the appropriate staffing in place when we go do this. The last thing we want to do is go make a change and then have to dial it back because we don't have enough folks to help drive the route or fix the bus. So this first phase, it launched on December 13th. We had enough drivers. We have enough folks to keep the buses running and on the road. So as we approach the next phase, which is going to be in April, we'll have that conversation again to make sure that we have appropriate staff in place. And I just want to point out as well that if you go to our website at abqride.com and you can see all the different phases, when we can combine some of the phases based on staffing availability, we will do that. And if we have to slow down a little bit because of staffing, we'll also take that step. But like I said, we just want to be responsible as we implement this plan.
And I think just to add to that, sort of what we're glossing over is that we've had a terrible staffing shortage that really kicked in after the pandemic, and is persisting but getting much better. So we hit a low of about 63% of our pre-pandemic service. So that's a huge reduction in service, and we went through several painful years, and now we're building back up. But it's an exciting time now because we are on that upward trend. Yeah.
One of the last times that you and I spoke in an interview was for an investigation I was doing about safety rider concerns on city buses. If anyone, we can link to those stories, but it was highlighting some of the violence that we had seen on city buses over the years. And this is, over years. So people were getting in fights, doing drugs on the buses. There were even shootings captured on video. Since then, we know the city has installed these thick plexiglass shields around the driver. There's also less interaction, it seems like, from riders and bus drivers because the passengers are no longer having to pay their fare when they get on the bus. And there's more security, right? Can you talk to us about what all has changed since some of these safety concerns have been highlighted?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up our last interview. So if I can take a moment and point out that all of those incidents that you that you and I spoke about, those all happened prior to zero fares. And there's this huge misconception out there that zero fares has led to this increase in crime and just all this bad activity out there. And that's not the case. It's not always true. So I always like to tell everybody, if you watch that report, every single incident that you and I discussed during that interview occurred prior to January 22. They were all when fares were still being collected. So with that being said, that doesn't mean that everything just stops either, right? So we recognized early on that we got to do something here, because part of increasing ridership is providing a safe, clean environment for folks, right? You know, nobody wants to utilize your service if it's not inviting and safe. So we got to work. We rolled up our sleeves and we started working with our other city departments, Metro Security, APD. We bring AFR to the table, and Albuquerque Community Safety. And we began that work when I came to transit back in 22. And out of that, we've been able to create this wonderful synergy between all these departments. They understand us better. We understand them a little bit better. What I mean by that is oftentimes we would call APD requesting help, but we were trying to speak cop language and we didn't know cop language. So the cops would take a while to get to us because they didn't think it was a big emergency because we were talking wrong, right? So when we started this meeting, we were able to develop this partnership between our departments so that when we needed their help, we could speak to them in their language or the terms they prefer to get spoken to. And it has really increased our response times. Sometimes it's as short as 30, 40 seconds that we've had officers arrive on scene. We've had individuals go out and behave badly, and then within 2 minutes they're arrested. This is huge, dramatic turnaround from prior to 22, where sometimes it would take hours to get folks to respond to us. But a lot of that just took us getting to know one another, working together, understanding what's going on. And then through that process, we took a long, hard look at ourselves and what we had to do. Everybody in the department's probably tired of hearing me talk about this, but I really, really preach the broken window theory to folks, which just talks about how we need to keep our area clean. And when we do that, then we signify to folks that we're a safe, warm environment to come to. So we've done that. We've gone out, we repainted shelters on Central Avenue. We're replacing putting brand new shelters up. And we're working on a brand new bus wash that should be up and running here pretty quick. We're just trying to send a message to the public that we know what we need to do, and we're continuing to work towards that. And all of that works in this realm of safety. And I think the biggest change since our last conversation is the implementation of the Transit Safety Officer program through APD. That program's just been enormous. The drivers feel very, very safe now. They feel like somebody's there taking care of them. We've also introduced a new passenger removal process. Whereas in the past, drivers felt it was their responsibility to handle a situation, which is not anything we ever want to put a driver in. We want our drivers to focus on the road, their passengers, keeping them safe. And if somebody's misbehaving, then now they can implement that new passenger removal process that gets our partners from APD out to the bus so they can handle it and use their training. And it makes for a safer environment for everyone.
We'll be right back with more of the New Mexico News Insiders.
KRQE News 13 investigations. One of the biggest cons in New Mexico history. How did they get away with it?
Well, they had an accomplice. The state of New Mexico.
A road rage encounter leads to murder.
I miss him every single day.
Did the judicial system fail here?
New Mexico's families, homes, and lives are left in ashes.
There's a level of anxiety.
FEMA has been an abject and abysmal failure.
Watch anytime on krqe.com or our YouTube channel.
Yeah, I know you mentioned the police program, but can you talk to us a little bit about that? Are officers now with APD able to help amplify the transit security force on the buses?
Absolutely. That response time that I mentioned earlier, that's part of that partnership. So what we really love about this program, and it's a huge benefit to the entire city of Albuquerque, We have folks that are coming through our program that ultimately end up as sworn police officers. So they might come in and they're too young to join the police force. So we might bring them in as a public service aide, and then they move up to the transit safety officer role. And then from there, they can move into the police department. So it's really helping the police department to fill their numbers and get more police officers on the streets. While at the same time, APD doesn't have to worry about coming to take care of ABQ RIDE anymore, because we have those transit safety officers, and because they are part of APD, they work very closely together. They know the language they need to speak. They know the response times. They know this. They're all on the same radio channels. So it's not uncommon these days to see a TSO arrive on scene within 40, 50 minutes or seconds, and then they make a call, and within 2 minutes, those police officers are on scene. It's just been a night and day difference in response time and just how folks are starting to feel out there. But I will admit, we have a long way to go. I'm not sitting here today trying to say that we've solved all the problems out there, because we know there's still a lot of work to do, and we'll continue to do that. And I think I can feel my Maddie staring at me over here, because I keep forgetting to say one of the biggest programs that we've implemented is our CSAY app, and that allows passengers, as they're out on the bus, if they see something, a bus is dirty, a stop is dirty, or if they see people behaving badly, they can report this app. They can report the situation through an app. Nobody knows what's going on. It goes immediately to our dispatch center, and then they can get the right folks involved. And that has been a huge help to getting the public involved.
Yeah. And those young transit officers are on the buses, right? They're a lot of times they're riding the bus.
Actually, no, we keep them mobile. And the reason we keep them mobile is if I have an officer on bus 1 and a situation occurs on bus 6, I can't get that officer to bus 6. They may be across town. But if I keep those officers in mobile units and something happens, they can respond immediately. And part of the passenger removal process that we've implemented is we're addressing situations before they even occur. And so when a driver recognizes somebody's violating the rules to ride, they'll have a conversation with the individual. If that individual fails to comply, then they'll initiate that process, which sends somebody out to help them out. Another wonderful thing about keeping them mobile is they're proactively making contact with folks at bus stops, at our stations. So we're addressing situations before they even board the bus now. So if we can deal with it before they even get on, that helps to minimize a lot of those situations that you and I spoke about over 4 years ago.
Okay. And just last question to wrap up on safety issues. I know you guys were also studying the issue. City Council was requesting data. Are you getting a sense today that people in general, drivers, passengers alike, are feeling more safe on buses? And is there data to kind of share publicly, whether that be with council or...
I'm glad you brought that up. So part of that study that council asked us to do was to address the data collection. The data collection was just not where it needed to be. It's still not where we like it to be. But the new long-range process that we actually will begin starting the end of this week, breaking news for you all, that's addressing that data collection. Right now, we gather data from different different departments, and we piece it together, and then we try to read that data as best as we can. But it's not honed in for ABQ RIDE, and it's not specific. So that new process that will begin later this week is actually going to help us to collect the data that we actually need so that we can better direct those transit safety officers when they're out. So right now, we have a really good idea of where incidents seem to occur, but the data is going to point us exactly where we need to keep folks. So stay tuned for that. Things just continue to get better. We continue to hire more folks. I was told this morning that we should be one shy of fully staffed on the transit safety officer side by the end of the month. And that'll allow us to start looking to bringing in more officers. The long range plan calls for 87, and we'll be at 30 by the end of the month with 3 sergeants. So we just continue to grow in that area, and we're really excited. To answer your question, if folks are feeling safer, we have heard from a lot of folks that they enjoy the bus more. We've had a teacher that has started using the bus to take her children on field trips now. I had a driver one time tell me flat out, he said, if you don't think that it's safer out here, then you're crazy. And I told him, well, I'm glad to hear that, not the words I would have chose, but he called it as he saw it out on the street.
Yeah. Safety is certainly a huge component. I think when you when you consider just how to get people to ride the bus more often. A big part of this also, the ABQ Ride Forward plan, though, is just talking to people. We know that a lot went into the process of reorganizing all of these bus routes. It didn't happen overnight. It sounds like there was years of planning, and that included some community conversations as well, hiring a firm to make proposals, getting feedback on those proposals, making more revisions. What all else went into the lead up to this? I think I hit a few points there, but did I miss anything there? There's quite a bit.
Yeah, actually, we started, you mentioned that we hired a consulting firm, Jarrett Walker and Associates, that this is their specialty, and actually around the world. They do this nationally and in Europe and Asia and Australia. So they're a really well-respected firm. It was really fun to get to work with them. One of the interesting things about how they work is they don't come in and tell you what your network should be. They help to foster a conversation with the community about what are the goals, and okay, now this is your goal. Now we can help you figure out how to get there. So we started off with just a fundamental question to the public, which is basically boils down to, would you rather walk further to a bus that always comes soon, or would you rather not walk very far and have a bus that comes occasionally? And from the planning side, the service provision side, basically, if we have 100 buses, we can scatter them among many routes, but that means they're not going to be able to go up and down that route very often. Maybe there's only one bus on that 10-mile route, so it's going to take a while for that bus to come to you. Or we could put all of our buses on just a few routes, and then they're always going to be coming soon. So that was kind of like, in a nutshell, that's our fundamental question. Like, should we be trying to get everywhere, but maybe not very conveniently, or should we be trying to focus in fewer areas, but try to make it really convenient? Because if you think about travel time, if you drive, you don't even think about this part, but you can get in your car and pull away from the curb anytime you want. When you ride the bus, you've got to wait for the bus, and that is really part of travel time. So that was one of the things we heard from the public, is we don't want to have to wait so long, but didn't want to walk too far either. So we were trying to find a balance.
Yeah, that's a big balance to find, especially in a sprawling Southwest community such as Albuquerque. So
yeah.
Right.
Well, let's talk about some of the changes. The plan impacts dozens, if not all, of the city's bus routes, and it's happening in phases, like you talked about. The first of 16 total phases just launched on December 13th before the new year. It affects 9 different routes. What are the most significant changes that we've seen in this first round?
So several of our major routes got more frequent. So we went from a bus that comes every 40 minutes to a bus that comes every 30. So it's not where we want to end up, but it's a good step in the right direction. Several of our routes actually changed geographically where they go. So for example, we have a route on Manal that used to get to 12th Street and then come to downtown. Now it's going to go all the way to Rio Grande so that we can serve the Sawmill and Old Town areas that are really starting to pick up in places that people want to go there. And a couple of routes got less frequent, but added service on Sunday. So we had some routes in the southwest part of town that didn't have any service at all on Sundays. So we made them a little bit less frequent, but we were able to add that service. So now 7 days a week, you can get where you want to go, which of course makes sense. That's also part of what we heard from the public is, it's not like I sit in my house all day on Sunday. I need to go somewhere on Sunday also.
Right. I want to highlight one of the changes that ultimately, as I understand, is a discontinuation of route service. One of those first was in the North Valley area, Route 36. I guess it covered 12th and Rio Grande. The North Valley, though, definitely seems like one of those like dead zones, I guess I could call it, because it does sort of get into Los Ranchos and you get into some county areas, and there's not a lot of through streets in many parts of the North Valley. What was behind eliminating this route instead of maybe adding more service to an area that maybe doesn't see as much?
Right. Yeah. So we did discontinue that route, but we do have what we call microtransit, ABQ Ride Connect, in that area. So there is still service. It's just not going out to wait at a bus stop. Actually, in some ways, it's more convenient for an area like that. You can use an app. It's basically public transit version of Uber or Lyft. You can use an app and schedule a trip to come and pick you up. and take you somewhere in that zone. So that's the difference between Lyft. We're not going to take you all the way to the far Northeast Heights or something, but we'll take you someplace in the North Valley zone that helps you connect to other transit routes. Or if you're just going to the grocery store, we'll take you to the grocery store. So it's a way to try to tailor the service to, like you said, to meet the characteristics of that area. So the North Valley, you touched on some important points for good fixed route service, which is you need to have enough people in walking distance of bus stops, and you have to be able to put a route in that goes somewhere relatively directly, so that people don't spend a lot of time going indirectly to, spending a lot of time going out of their way. So the North Valley route that we discontinued actually was a one-way large loop, which may be great in one direction for you, but when you come back, you've got to go all the way around the loop to get there.
Right. And I want to just ask one more question on that micro transit service. So essentially this is, as I understand, serves the North Valley sector and also a Southwest Mesa sector, right?
Right. Yes. We have 2 zones.
Yeah. And so this is essentially, like, as you said, this is a free service, right? People are calling for essentially an on-demand or scheduled into whatever other trips might be out there.
Right.
Pickup to go to places in those areas. And that's been going on for several months now.
Right. Yeah. We actually started that in the spring of 24.
Yeah,
Bobby for
yeah,
confirmation.
I remember we did a news
It seems
story.
like it's been a while.
I actually want to say it was in October of 23 is when we started Connect.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's ABQ RIDE Connect
Yeah.
is the name of the
Yeah.
service
So it's. I guess the point is it's.
Are
gotten
people
pretty
using
well,
it a lot?
Pretty well established. Yes.
People love it.
Okay.
People absolutely love it. Like Andrew said, we'll come to your front door and pick you up, give you a ride to the grocery store.
What kind of vehicle is picking people up?
It's a 7-passenger van.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it even has room if you have a child that needs a car seat. It's got a built-in car seat. So
Yeah.
Okay.
It's almost been 2 years. I found our
Yeah.
original news article. March 18th was, it looks like, when the program launched. March 18th,
Okay.
2024.
Yeah. And wheelchair accessible.
that's the other big one. Yeah.
Yeah. Free Uber. I like that analogy. The next change is slated for mid-2026, according to the timeline that ABQ RIDE has online. Can you guys give us an example of some other changes that people will expect to see with this next phase?
Yeah. So we're, the first phase kind of set the tone. So we're going to be slowly making some geographic changes to routes, and increasing frequency and adding weekend service. Those are kind of some of the main themes of the changes that we're planning. So, so there actually is one more route that we're going to discontinue, and that will also be replaced with an ABQ RIDE Connect zone. It's in the South Valley in the Trisco area. So there'll be a little bit of that kind of change as well. But really the main goal is trying to get those routes more frequent, running 7 days a week. In the ultimate plan, Saturday and Sunday service will look a whole lot like weekdays, whereas before the pandemic, Saturdays were about half of a Sunday, Sundays were about half of a Saturday, so really there was hardly any service on a Sunday.
We'll be right back with more on New Mexico News Insiders.
Hey guys, Chad Brummett here with New Mexico Frontiers, the KRQE original series that focuses on tech and innovation happening right here in New Mexico. We've got a lot of great stories about various businesses, technology, and of course space exploration. So make sure that you follow us on air at KRQE and Fox New Mexico, as well as our KRQE YouTube channel online. In the meantime, let's get back to the New Mexico News Insiders.
We mentioned this a little bit earlier, but this is going to be years in the making to unleash all of the changes. Basically, I think it's slated through the end of 2029 at this point. But I think, as you mentioned earlier, Bobby, if you have the staff, y'all might combine phases and put them out, quicker, I guess, so to speak.
Absolutely. This next phase, we actually, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to have discussions with the team prior to executing the next phase. And after we executed phase 1, we came together to discuss what worked, what didn't work, what we can improve on it in implementing the next phase. And as we talked a little bit more, we were looking at phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4, and we determined that we were going to take phase 3 and 4 and combine them and implement that next. So that became our phase 2. So we actually once we implement this next phase 2, we will actually be ahead of schedule for now. But like I also said, we're going to be responsible as we implement these phases. So if we come to a phase and it's determined that, we don't have enough staffing, we're going to hold back. Last thing we want to do is introduce service to only have to go cut it again. So we'll keep approaching them. Right now, the plan that Andrew put together, it's a well thought out plan. Andrew worked really hard to put this plan in place, and he's worked hard with not only his team, but with the bus stop maintenance crew and with the IT team to make sure that all the moving parts are working together. And it's a well thought out plan. So if we need to make any adjustments, we can do that, but that's all going to be based on staffing.
I think one question people are going to have hearing about these changes is cost. Is the change in ridership services adding a huge layer of cost? Is it staying within the same budget? What is the
I love that question, because that's the first thing that comes to everyone's mind, right? Andrew, do you want to go ahead and give them the good news on that?
Sure. Yeah, so we at the beginning of this project, we basically budgeted ourselves the level of service that we had before the pandemic. So we're just going to be climbing back to that same level of service that we had before. So, transit's subject to inflation like everybody else, but the underlying cost, other than inflation, is basically getting back to the previous staffing levels that we had.
That equals fiscally responsible change is taking place at transit, and as the directors, we really like that. So that, again, it's well thought out planning that Andrew put out there. So I can't be more excited for this plan. It's going to be a state of the art system for the future generations of Albuquerque, and we know that those folks that rely on the system, they're going to love it. They came out, they basically drafted this system for us, so we're excited.
There are always cynics out there, especially in the comment sections of any post of any single news story that exists on the internet. I would just call it 100%. But people are going to see this to some degree and say, "Oh, you guys, you work for ABQ, right? Of course, you're proud of what you're going to do. You're just going to sing the praises of this." To the cynics who don't think or that there's actually real meat behind this change. What do you tell them? This seems significant from everything you're telling. How do you try to, if you haven't already heard from them, convince the cynics that this is a really big deal, that this is a large shift of bus services?
Yeah, so we got a lot of public input all along the way, and of course, not everybody's happy with changes when you make change. But we, in our last phase of the project, we showed people our draft network and asked for feedback on that. And about 70% of respondents said it would be better for them personally, as opposed to, I think it was about 12% who would be worse. So, right there, I think those are great statistics. If you think about when you try to make a win in public policy, it's usually not benefiting that many people. And when we ask people, do you think it'll be better for the city as a whole, kind of stepping back from their personal situation, the numbers got even more sort of lopsided. I think about 80% of people said it was going to be better for the city as a whole, and less than 10% were saying it'd be worse. So we got really positive feedback. And over the course of the whole project, we collected over 3,000 survey responses through those phases. We held dozens of meetings. We had a lot of conversations. We went out to bus stops. We were at the Alvarado Transportation Center talking to people. So I think we've made, certainly in terms of effort, I think we've really tried hard to do the kinds of changes that people want. Overall, of course, as I said, some people will not appreciate the change, or they didn't use it before and they still not going to find it useful. But our goal is to try to be really much better for as many people as possible.
And I would say to those naysayers, if you're interested in saving money, give the bus a try. If you're a student at UNM, parking is ridiculous there, right? Jump on the bus, it's free. You can go park at one of our facilities for free, jump on the bus for free, and we run great service to the UNM and CNM areas, and you no longer have to pay for gas in your car. The brakes in your cars last longer. The oil changes go a little bit longer, and you don't pay for that parking. I think the last statistic I read is something like, say, $5,000 a year using public transportation. So that's what I like to always tell naysayers. You don't have to use it all the time, but if you just use it to get to school or to work 5 days a week, something like that, you put some money in your pocket.
Well, I think that goes to another question I had that comes to mind anytime we talk about public transportation in the city that we live in, which, if we're being honest, has a reputation when you're talking to people who live outside of Albuquerque, right? Like, people are concerned about crime and safety, and those two things are always like first and I think at the top of people's minds. But what do you say to people who might just like have that stigma against like, oh, you ride the bus in Albuquerque? Like, what is your message to those folks who might just be like concerned or not want to do it?
I tell them, give it a try. If you've never tried it, you can't really talk bad about it. But you're right. Public transportation across the country has dealt with a bad stigma, right? People like myself, marketers, done an amazing job convincing us that riding the bus is only for the poor people, and that's because their mission was to sell more cars out of Detroit, right? So in order to make that happen, bus bad, car good, and we bought into it, hook, line, and sinker over the years is what we've done. So it's a challenge for us at ABQ Ride to fight generations of marketing that has been ingrained in our minds. And then living out, before we came on air, we talked a little bit about using public transportation, and all of us admitted that we use it outside of Albuquerque more, and it just seems more natural, right? Well, when you go to places like New York City, it's hard to own a car there. It's really hard to own a car there, so you rely on public transportation. Other parts of the world, like Portland and up in Seattle, they've really adopted it, and they've made it part of their life. And here in the southwest region of America, it's really tough to get folks to recycle their plastic bottle, to jump on a bus. For whatever reason, in the southwest region of the United States, we have a hard time with sustainable efforts. So we just got to keep hammering away, keep at it, and I don't want to convince everybody to get on the bus. I know that's not realistic, but I know there's a good portion of the population that can do it, and just come give it a try, and you'll be surprised at how great it is. And this new, again, the new Forward, it's going to make it more convenient for you. You'll get to and from your destination a lot faster. So I understand that in the past it took time, and that made it unattractive. You really had to plan your day out. Like Andrew said, it was all part of travel time. Now, with this work, we're hoping that we take that away from you. What we hope is you just show up at the stop, there comes a bus. Or if you missed one, no big deal, another one will be here shortly. And that's what this system is really going to strive for, make it more convenient for everyone.
Okay.
We actually have a really cool app, the transit app. So you can track your bus on the app. You can actually see where it is, make sure you didn't already miss it. You can plan a trip on it, and it'll give you a little reminder it's time to leave. You got to put down that sandwich and go out to the bus.
Okay.
So it's a pretty cool app. I'd encourage people to use that.
All right. Anything we're missing that we didn't ask you guys about that you want to add?
I will add this one last thing since we're talking about getting folks on bus. One of the biggest complaints I hear is, if there's an emergency at home, that's why I don't take the bus, because if there's an emergency, I have to get home quick. I raised 3 kids, and I've never had to leave work in the middle of the day because of an emergency at home. So I call foul on that excuse. But but we have this program called Guaranteed Ride Home. So if something does happen, give us a call. We'll go pick you up and get you back to your car. You get 3 free rides a year when in that kind of situation. So We've even addressed those naysayers. But yeah, it's time, Albuquerque. Give ABQ Ride a try.
And more all-day service will make it easier to get back, so you're not stranded in the middle of the day.
Absolutely. Good point. Yep.
No, all this and more is at abqride.com. So we have our whole phasing plan on there. We've got a report and maps and all sorts of cool stuff you can find out on abqride.com if people are interested in more.
Right on. Well, thank you. ABQ Ride Deputy Director Bobby Sisneros and Principal Planner Andrew Garmo. Thank you both for being here and giving us the honest take on riding the bus here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again to ABQ Ride's Deputy Director Bobby Sisneros and Principal Planner Andrew Garmo for joining us in this conversation. On the way out, we were talking about, reaching this audience. This episode is not just for folks who ride the bus. They really want to get the word out. Like that free Uber app, I can think of at least like 5 instances had I known that existed, it would have been really useful.
Hey, yeah. It's a very good point that there are changes in the transit system that are being designed and thought of for those who just think about bus in the old school sense and getting around the city in the old school sense, that you arrive at a stop, wait for a big old thing to come and pick you up. So just a good example of how they're just doing things differently. And I think that continues to be, even though that's existed for 2 years now, it's still a new thing for many people to learn of, just as much as this ABQ Ride Forward thing is.
Yeah, and I think the idea that they're sort of adapting to modern trends of how people get to work is different than pre-pandemic, and adjusting, transportation that way. And also, if you want to save money or just be a little more green, I guess, in your life, this is something you can do. Quick, I just want to list some of the apps, because we were like, you guys have a lot of apps. They have the CSA app, and that's the one where you can report instances on the bus. They have the Connect app, the Transit app, which is the one where you can, just see your bus, and then the ABQ Ride Go, that's the micro transit pickups.
Right. And importantly to note that Transit app is one that you can use all across the country with various different transit systems. ABQ Ride sort of dumps their data into the larger app, and you can use it in other big cities. Yeah, it's like an apparatus.
It's a large apparatus. Thank you all for listening. If you guys have any story ideas or people you'd like to hear from on our show, always feel free and reach out. I'm Gabrielle.Burkhart@krqe.com via email, and gburknm on social media.
I'm at Chris McKee TV, also Chris.McKee@krqe.com. Thanks for watching and listening.